Hey there, folks. Carpo here, and I just wanted to, make a little video here to talk about something that was on my mind earlier. And to try to summarize it, it's how much of ourselves do we give to society, or how much of ourselves do we give to helping the world, helping people, helping animals, helping the environment. And I guess what I'm talking about are activists or activism in any form. And it doesn't have to be specifically a Greenpeace out there on a raft, trying to stop whaling. I'm talking about any type of, well, today there are new words for that, new terms that they're using for people. I think that the one that's particularly used is, the bleeding heart liberal, or, those who want to help everybody. And help those less fortunate, and how people, let's just take two opposite ends of the spectrum. We have those over here who say, you've got to work for your own, you've got to take care of your own, and fuck everybody else. And then the people over here who say, we have to take care of everyone in our society, especially those who are less fortunate. And then there are those who are caught in the middle, who realize that it's preposterous to think that we shouldn't help other people, but it's also preposterous to think that we have to help everyone. And it's a very difficult situation to really consider when you really pick it apart and start analyzing it. The idea that, a person will say, hey, there are folks out there who are really suffering and are trying so hard and really need the help. I'll give you an example of several. This happens all the time, but say a guy gets pulled over, the police claim they found cocaine in his car. And this happens with their test kits, and they'll test it, and it'll show up in the field as positive. So many false positives for supposed drugs. I mean, I'm sure you may have heard the story of the guy who got pulled over with a sock full of cat litter in his car to absorb moisture. But it was his dad's car, so he didn't know what it was, and he ended up getting busted for meth because it tested positive for meth. He ended up getting released, actually. They had their real test done and realized, okay, this is bullshit, and he got off. Well, because he's white. Of course, there was another fellow, a black guy, who got busted, and the cops claimed they found cocaine on his floorboards. And he was incarcerated for 20 years for something he didn't even do. And these are the cases where when people want to stand up to try to help someone, there's a huge difference between someone who's maybe done something wrong or subjectively wrong, such as, well, this law shouldn't be in place and this person shouldn't have gone to jail for this, as opposed to this person was blatantly ripped off and framed, and they are suffering because of other people's stupidity or arrogance, ignorance. And what I'm getting at here is that there are certain cases and some people who truly get screwed over and really need help. But at the same time, there are people who get themselves in trouble. There are also people who are very broke and they're disabled and they can't afford to buy their own food. Then there are people who are broke and choose to not do a goddamn thing because they don't want to do anything. And then they just stand in the corner and ask for help, or, complain to their friends and family about how horrible they're doing and how hard life is. And all you want to do is say, hey, take care of your own shit, We as individuals, it is survival of the fittest, and that sounds so harsh when you say it, because we as humans have the capability to decide to help each other. And so what we see is some people just never helped enough. They can't take care of themselves, and this is where ultra-conservatives have a problem with liberal attitudes, because, and I can see it from both sides. I want to help people. I want to be altruistic. I want to do things for others, but I want to do them under my own, in my own time and the way I choose to do so. Not being guilted into giving $1 at the cashier or the checkout for some, hey, would you like to give $1 for the starving kids of East Malaysia? And you're like, no, I don't know. I haven't checked into this, charity to see if it's really a charity or how much is scammed off the top or if the money's ever really even getting to where it goes. But it's a good example because we feel guilty as if we should help others that are less fortunate. It's like when you pull up and you're the person at that light and there's the guy standing on the corner with the sign, and you end up getting the red light and you're sitting right next to that guy who's, homeless, hungry, God bless. If the guy's standing there doing something, if he's playing a guitar, or if he looks happy, or he's making an effort, then, I love to give people money. Or if they're extremely hating it. But then there are people that you can tell that are just fully capable of going out and taking care of themselves. And I think, well, here I am, paying for my own gas and coming home from work, and you see somebody on the corner who's just asking for money. Those are difficult things to work out in our own minds, and those are extreme examples, but it's really all subjective. It's all perspective. If you see things for what they are, you're only seeing them for what they are in your own mind. Most of us have not traveled the whole world and seen every country. We only hear news stories. We can research and look into populations and whatnot, and how many people are hungry, how many people need help, how many people are starving. But back to the point here is, how much should we really care about the world around us? Because this goes so far beyond just helping people. And I didn't even want to get too deep into these details, but, as far as those who are very concerned about, let's say, corruption, or those who are super concerned about, say, the Illuminati and how they're going to create a new world order and devalue the money and create a one world currency and globalization, and they're going to kill off all the people, and there's going to be martial law, and they're going to depopulate, and it's Agenda 21 and chemtrails and everything else. My question is, does that benefit you to feel that way? Does that benefit you at all to think that the world is completely screwed and there's no way out of it? If that serves an individual to feel that way, so be it. I feel more like it's kind of a desperate clinging on to the excitement of the what ifs, or what could be, and moving away from our own inner lives to worry too much about the external world. And that's really the point I'm trying to get to here, which is that the more we concern ourselves with what Bob and Jane are doing over here, or what this government's doing over here, or, how many fish these people are catching and when they shouldn't be, these are all based on laws that we've created, a lot of them. And we're assuming that these laws are all reasonable and rational, and that everyone else should follow the law since we do in these certain ways. But I'm sure that there are ways that we all break the rules in our own way that others don't. Trying to point the finger at other people, it only points back at us. So the message I guess I'm trying to convey is not to ignore the world's issues, not to ignore people who need help, but not to feel obligated and pressured into being concerned about things that we can't change. And it comes down to the circle of influence or the circle of concern. We have two different issues to worry about. The circle of influence are things we can actually change, such as you're not having a good relationship with your spouse or your brother or your cousin or whatever it may be. And so you work on changing the way that you behave and tact within the conversations, or whatever you're doing to where you're not getting along. You work on those things because that is in your circle of influence. But your circle of concern, those are things that are like, well, the government's trying to, depopulate the world, or there's these secret shadow organizations. And I've seen this attachment to these ideas that often they stem from, I guess it's kind of, for a lot of people, it's distrust. Because in times of my life where I've been wronged or been robbed or ripped off from people that I knew or friends or anyone, times when I've been wronged by society, I've built quite I wouldn't say a negative attitude towards society, but rather, bullshit, Society's crap and the whole system's falling apart and it's not working out. But the minute it is working for us, then all of a sudden we feel good and we feel like, okay, things aren't so bad. And so it's finding that happy medium between seeing things as completely corrupt and fucked and seeing things as a rainbow in a unicorn's ass. I mean, you can't pretend like everything's okay. So as individuals, we have to be educated and intellectual enough to at least see things around us that are obviously wrong and to try to correct those mistakes with whatever power we have. But a guy sitting behind a computer complaining about the Illuminati is going to accomplish absolutely nothing. And no matter how much research you do, no matter how much reading you do, and how many videos you post about it, no secret societies are going to say, oh shit, Bob found out about us, And another example, I guess, would be, I'd like to at least get this across, is that there are a lot of problems out there that do need to be addressed. But I feel like there are a few groups of people who would rather attack ideas that they can't do anything about, not for the sake of them being important, but so they don't have to do anything about it. An example would be saying that space doesn't exist, or that the Earth is flat. No matter what you present to people, they're going to still believe that. Every photo is faked. None of us can go into space, so therefore they can be comfortable in not being able to be proven wrong. Another example would be chemtrails. Even if they were talking about, even if they are chemicals, whether they're chemicals in the atmosphere or just straight contrails from condensation, doesn't matter. Either way, I think we can all agree that on certain days the whole sky gets covered in clouds because of it, and maybe agree and come to the conclusion in the middle that it's a pollution issue. But the funny thing is that people will point up and complain about the airplanes, but they won't say anything about the factory right down the street from their house, or try to change regulations or affect things that are actually provable on the ground, in our hands, within our hands. In other words, it's a pipe dream that we can go out and solve all these large problems that we don't even understand. Often that stems from us not being able to handle the problem of being alive as individuals. Not being able to see who we are and to embrace. Because if we can distract ourselves for long enough from the big issues that we face in our own lives, by projecting that onto the issues of the world, hopefully you see where I'm coming from. I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't tackle the big problems. I definitely believe we should be outspoken about the things that we can change and help others. But it has to be on a small individual basis. The whole think globally, act locally attitude. And that's not enough for some people, but it's to each his own. If I were to summarize this video, the message I'm trying to get across, it's that if you find yourself concerned with big issues and it's causing you grief in your life, if it's causing you any type of loss of sleep or headaches or frustration, or you're arguing with people incessantly, even if you're right, ask yourself if it's really worth the energy, because life is short, and to go out arguing and spending time fighting with people about things that we're not sure about or that are irrelevant, really. Yeah, and that's my subjective take. I'm not saying all the things I mentioned are irrelevant, but rather we have to look within and say, most of the things, if we see the world negatively, that's often a projection of our own inner turmoil and our own negativity in our own life. And that's the way I see it. Because happy people seldom go around complaining. Truly happy people. There are people who pretend like they're happy and they have plastic smiles and all they want to do is poke and prod. Those are the folks who are always seem joyful until the minute you expose yourself or reveal, let's say, a shortcoming or a weakness or a vulnerability about yourself, and they start to attack that. And then you realize that they're not as confident in themselves as they think they are, because true happiness and confidence doesn't require the belittling of anyone else. And so, as a species, we don't know where the hell we're from or where we're going, but we do know that we're conscious and aware, and we can make the decision to try to ease pressure on everyone and help one another and stop fighting amongst ourselves to an extent. The old, can't we all just get along? Well, sometimes. Take care, everybody.